Hey, welcome to the Writer's Realm podcast, and thanks for joining us on the epic adventure we call writing. We're your hosts, Bob,
Holly.
And Austin.
And today we have our special guest,
Rain. Hi.
Rain Sullivan. We're going to be talking
Welcome.
about world building. Okay. Now, first off, we want to let you know something. Usually, these past couple of episodes have been about Nano. Due to recent events, all of us separately have done our own research, and we have decided separately to disassociate ourselves with Nano. If this is brand new to you and you have no idea what's going on, we would prefer for you to go just Google Nano 2023 because we're not experts on any of this subject. All we're doing is kind of like third person reading this stuff. And it definitely wouldn't be fair for any of us to go, hey, this is exactly what's happening, and point you in the wrong direction. We don't want to do that. So from here on out, we're just doing a podcast, and we're just going to invite guests and talk about different things. So we're not with Nano anymore. However, that does not mean we're not doing our projects anymore. We are doing our projects, okay? So, and that's what we want to encourage you with. Whether or not you stick with Now, that's up to you completely, and no one's going to be judging. But we do want you to stick with your project. We know you've worked hard on it, or you're working hard on it, and you want to continue to do that. So we would just want you to just keep on keeping on with that, okay? That being said, where are we at on our November projects, we'll call them? Rain, how about you? Oh, wait a second. Rain, tell us all about yourself. I am so sorry. Who is Rain?
Okay.
Who is Rain?
Hi, I'm Rain. I write primarily sci-fi and fantasy, usually novels, but I do some short stories as well. And is this a moment when I give my socials?
Yes, absolutely.
Cool.
Where can we find you?
Okay, you can find me on Instagram at write_as_Rain_Sullivan, or you can find me online at rainsullivanwrites.com.
Okay, so you write YA fantasy? Did you say YA fantasy and sci-fi?
Nope.
I got
No, adult only.
The youngest I've gone is new adult, but mostly just adult.
Okay.
Yeah, I think a lot of people assume that I write YA, which is funny. I don't know why, but no.
It's just all over the place. We're on Instagram a lot, and I'm sorry to say that's all if there's somebody writing, it's going to be YA fantasy. So I'm sorry. That's my fault for asking. But
we're good.
Yeah. Got anything published yet?
I've got 3 short stories published.
Awesome.
Yeah, thanks. 2 of them you can see on my website because they're published, and then there's like a length of time, and then you can publish them yourself.
Okay.
One of them hasn't passed that length of time yet. They're actually more like sci-fi thrillery.
Ooh, that's exciting.
Yeah, every now and then I like dip into like thriller horror.
Ooh.
When I'm feeling spooky.
I like it.
Often.
Yeah,
which is often
the best.
Like supernatural stuff, or just like Hannibal Lecter stuff?
There's a little bit like, okay, in a piece that I just worked on, it gets a little supernatural. In like a kind of like creepy bodily gore kind of way.
Wow.
And then in the 2 pieces that are on my website, one is like fight for your life kind of thriller with like a sci-fi twist, and then the other one's more like dig up a body. You know?
Dig up that's it. What's the premise? Dig up a body. Okay, I'll buy it.
Pretty much.
Wow. That is so neat. How exciting is that? Okay, so what's your November project you're working on?
So I'm doing an adult sort of a like futuristic dystopian sci-fi. It's close future, like just a couple hundred years ahead of where we are now, just a couple hundred, you know. So there's some like tech advancements, but the big thing is there's like a drug advancement, and it's throwing things out of whack that are already very out of whack in our current world, and taking a look at like what happens if you really do lose the entire middle class. What happens if we take away
Wow, that's really cool.
So, but with like a sci-fi gritty edge. So
wow.
yeah,
that sounds fantastic.
Yeah,
What
not
do
to
you
already
guys
get off
do?
on a tangent, but it
Yeah.
like losing the entire middle class reminds me of the fan theory that the Jetsons and the Flintstones are the same universe, and that the Jetsons are the upper class and the Flintstones are the lower class down on the ground.
That's awesome.
I've never
Silly.
heard that, but I kind of love
Yeah.
it.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks. How about Austin? What are you working on this month?
Yeah, so I'm still working on both my projects. So they're both still on pace. So they're at 25,000 each. And so, yeah, I am solidly transitioned my sci-fi into a fantasy set in the future. So one of the characters got kidnapped by a Fey Lord. So that's a whole thing now. Yeah, so it's going strong. A lot more horror elements brought into that setting too. So that's been fun. I guess I was just in a horror mood this month, so I wrote 2 of them.
Wow. I have a question about your Fae. Do they have wings or not?
This one does. It's basically he's like a giant, almost like if a plague doctor was like an half actual like raven kind of a thing.
Huh.
So he's a fun guy.
Wow.
That's cool.
Yeah. God, I love it. I love talking to writers. This is like the coolest thing. Holly, what are you working on?
I am still working on Heartbound. I'm really enjoying it. I'm a little bit sad that I've kind of like pushed the Blood Sky off to the side because I keep thinking about it. Like I really want to get back to it. But I'm just really enjoying writing Heartbound because I feel like it's a little bit lighter. It's a little bit of an easier novel to write. And I'm learning so much about my writing style while I'm writing it. As you know, I went through and I did really good outline before I started it. And now I'm just kind of pantsing what's going on in the middle. But as I'm going through my chapters and I'm looking at the different things I've written, for example, there's this one scene where someone goes and speaks to a coven about a problem that they're having. And when she goes to speak to the coven, as I'm writing it, I'm like, actually, it's not the coven, it's her, this really, really good friend of hers who she's known for years. And it just, the story was writing so much better instead of there being a group of people talking about this problem, having like a more intimate conversation about the problem. And so it's just been really fun for me to kind of work through some of those things as I've been writing. And I'm just like creating characters out of nowhere. Like characters are just, walking in the door and there they are. And it's helping me reevaluate a lot of the things that I expected for myself. So I'm really, really liking it.
Yeah,
there's
you're having a
something
great time.
amazing about that. The pantsing of it. And she's like, oh, hey, this is in here now.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hey, we didn't ask Rain. Are you a pantser or a plotter or in between?
Definitely in between. I like to like have like my map with where I need to go. And I do love Save the Cat. I know some people like don't like the structure
I like it.
guidebooks,
No,
but
I like it.
I like to have my like 15 beats and then pants a lot in between them. But like if I gotta get here, so I can't go that way.
Right.
And that's enough.
Yeah, I love Save the Cat as a general structure. I don't like it if you're going by like, oh, on this page this happens. Like that's where I find it a little rough. But as a general structure, it's great.
Yeah, agreed. And I think nobody asked me this, but like I feel like it's great to like read through it again to like get it, and then stop looking at it. Because if you get too tied to those beats and those rules, you get stuck in like
that's true
boxes. So
yeah. Now I will say what
I was just going to ask what you were working on.
Who cares what I'm working on? Right now we're talking about Rain. I will get to me in a second, but there's a storyboard behind you, and your social media for those listeners that aren't on YouTube. She has a storyboard behind her, and her social media is filled with like these beautiful, amazing, intricate. It looks like plot outlines and beats. Maybe is that what's going on?
Yeah.
Well,
Like,
see,
and
if
then
you
you're
call
like,
yourself
oh,
in
I'm.
between,
So
I know. Like, I'm like, no, you're not.
okay, so the storyboard gets like half built before I start,
Mhm.
and
and
then
then you
filled
add.
in as I go.
Okay,
Ah.
I
So
love that. That's
Oh, that's a
so
really good
choice.
idea.
Okay, wait.
so
Explain that again, slower,
okay,
so
so
I
do
can
you see all these,
understand.
like, I know this is gonna be rough for listeners, but like, see all the
Okay.
yellow ones on the bottom?
And
Mhm.
hold on, real quick, just for our listeners. There's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 rows of different colored post-it notes on a board, a foam board. And this is what she has all the time in her social media, and it's just crazy
It's
slash
beautiful.
amazing. Yeah, it's just like
They're,
this is a worker. This is an artist working on stuff. Okay, Rain, go ahead.
they're like pretty once they're mostly completed.
Hmm.
So I start with just my basic beats, and
Mhm.
then those move, like, they're just all over the board as I figure them out.
Okay.
And then I shove them down and make room for chapter summaries,
Mm.
which is what all
Mm.
these like rainbow sticky notes are on top. And they're different colors because they're different characters.
Oh,
Ah.
okay, nice.
That's really cool. That's an
Yeah,
amazing way to keep organized.
Jeez,
yeah.
that
I do
is.
that in Excel, so I appreciate that. I super
Mm.
color code it based off the POV as well. So
Mhm.
it's so much easier to be like, oh, I haven't seen red in a little bit.
Yep, exactly. And you might be like, there's just a disgusting number of colors up there, and you are correct. I have had to cut some POVs,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it's fine.
The easiest way to
I
cut POVs is to kill characters.
There you go.
I will say that I need to adopt some
Mhm.
form of that, because I have like so many times been going through and then like gotten halfway through a chapter and been like, oh, this is from the wrong person's point of view. And then I'll have to like go
Mm.
back and like redo it all so that it's from the proper character's point of view and stuff like that. Just, I mean, not that you don't like a different perspective, but sometimes
Yeah.
you need a little bit of a break from someone. So
Mm.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, that is. That's brilliant. This is the only reason why I wanted a podcast, so I can find out what everyone else. I don't want your ideas. I already have a billion of my own ideas I need to get to.
For your
But
techniques.
the techniques, and the
Yes.
tools are amazing. So
And come on, Bob. You know you want our ideas. You know you want Grimdark Pokemon.
I've
Hardcore.
dude, I already have 15 published, so I'm already past that. Yeah. Grimdark Pokemon.
Hey, don't knock it. It's
Ghastly.
gonna be great.
Ghastly and Haunter take the town. All right, anyway. Moving on. Okay, yeah, so mine is just over halfway finished. And it's called Coil and Fang, Death by Invitation Only. It's about based on the murder hotel built in 1893 by H.H. Holmes. Holmes is the real Holmes. This H.H. Holmes person just happened to have the same last name as my fictional character, Sherilyn Holmes. So I wanted to make something of that. So she, along with 7 others, get invited to this hotel, and they're trapped in there, soundproof glass, moving rooms, mirrored halls. There's all kinds of trickery going on in there, and they're all trapped, and they're all going to start getting murdered one by one. And they got to find out who's doing all this and a way out. So, but what so this is where I'm horrible, Rain, is I do not do any, like, all that beautiful work you have. I'm just kicking myself because I would not be in this problem, because I do not do any sort of, I mean, my plot outline is like 2 sentences each going down the chapter. Chapter 1, this happens. Chapter 2, this happens. And I just follow along. But I got stuck because I stopped at like chapter 10. Like, I don't know what I was like, well, I'll just figure it out. And I was literally like, a few days ago, I was like, literally like, well, I'm done. I felt like an ant, like if you block off their trail, like they're just lost, right? They're just like, where am I going? That's exactly. So I started on the end because I knew how it was going to end. So I wrote a 2-part climax and then the conclusion. So I have all that completed. So the end. So that's going to be the nice surprise for me, is when I finally catch up to that point, like it's all done. But yeah, so I am absolutely a pantser, obviously. And what I'm doing is just going through, trying to follow through what makes sense. just kind of connecting the dots into this awesome climax that I wrote. I have to figure out how to get there. So it's almost like I'm working my way backwards on that. So, but yeah, I love what Rain has brought us. We're going to steal that.
I really like that.
Yeah.
I'm always impressed by people who can write out of order. Like
Yeah.
that blows my mind. Like writing the end before the middle.
Mhm.
Oh, the middle always has to come last.
Yeah,
Nice.
that's the
Like
boring
things
part.
like
That's the boring
you
part.
claw your way through the middle and then you finally get to end and it's like
You're right. Yeah,
get to like zip through it.
like a
I mean,
victory rush.
half the time I have to throw away the last couple of chapters because I wrote them before I wrote anything else. But you know what? I can take the dialogue and some of the action and throw it somewhere else at some point. It's fine.
Fun.
You're gonna throw away half of draft one, I feel like, no matter what.
That's true.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's true.
Yeah,
So
I mean,
encourage all
my
the
first
writers
draft.
this month.
Yeah, my first draft of my first book was it was 30 chapters and the 50,000 words, and the final one was 130 chapters and like 135,000 words. And I don't think any of there was like no overlap, so it was like a completely new work. So
Oh my
you just got to
gosh.
throw it away. It's fine.
I can do that.
So
All right.
thinking
Oh, go ahead.
of
Go ahead.
thinking of world building, I have to know, Rain, I'll start with you. Is there any like one specific thing that you like to base your worlds on and then build around that thing? Or is it just kind of like a whole concept? I'm always curious to see how people kind of start their worlds.
Yeah, I basically like take whatever chunk like popped into your mind and run with it. So that might be like a creature type, like the Fey Lord you were talking about, Austin. That sounds like so cool. So if like that popped into your head first and then you kind of build around them, great. But if it's like a magic system, awesome. I feel like for me, it's something different every time. On this like most recent project, it was definitely more the concept of having this drug that I'm not going to say what it does and how would that like affect the world that we're in. And then of course I needed time for like development and for the patent to wear out, so that's why it's in the future. And so that kind of sparked it. So honestly, whatever is just like the thing that's clawing at your brain at 2 a.m, take that and go from there.
Yeah, that's so awesome. I feel like there's just so many things. So it makes sense that it's not always the same for you, right? Like there's just so many things, like whether it's like the history of something or whether it's religion, which we are going to have a whole episode on talking about religion and writing and things like that. But there's also like social hierarchies and like you said, just like a creature or a magic system, or like the list is endless, right? Of things that you can base a world on. So it's always interesting to hear.
Yeah. And once you've kind of have your something that you're excited about, then I feel like then you can start worrying about like rules and laws and like what is the mood of your world and like what's the environment like, what's the language, what's the culture, like those are things you can start filling in once you've got like your central idea. And what that central idea I don't really think matters. Like
yeah, because I think one of those things, like it's a lot easier for me to start with like the world itself before I start thinking about what the people in those worlds are like, especially like the culture and that kind of stuff. Otherwise, it can feel like there's a big divorce between the people that I've created and the world that they're in. I guess you can start the other way. It's just a lot cleaner for me to start with like, okay, I've got this magic system. This is what the world looks like. Their world was shattered and now it's all these floating islands. Like, okay, well, like if that's the thing that I'm going with, well, like, what does that culture look like? Like that's obviously going to have profound effects on what the culture is like. And so just kind of figuring out how that all fits together in one, cohesive thing, hopefully.
Yeah. I kind of think of it like a weird high school, like what is it called when you got your class schedule? So like once you have your cool idea, then you have like gov, econ, soc, history, environmental science, and language. It's like if you like just go through those things, you can kind of like piecewise it together.
That makes sense. Yeah. Like for my series right now, it's steampunk. It's set in 1892. So it's already there. Like, this is real America. This is set in San Francisco, and they're in Chicago right now. So it's, that part is easy. I just add steampunk elements, so it's not really a whole thing. But I do like what we say, just start with something that you're really excited about, because another series I have is like a cozy series set in Halloween Town, and immediately that's, I have to do world building. Like, I want some weird stuff, for my characters to walk through and to go through, and so that is exciting to me. Yeah, and right now the like I said, the Coil thing is just like, it's already there. It's San Francisco, anyways. Moving on. But yeah, there's something neat that you can't wait to get into. And I guess it could be anything, right? It doesn't have to be the world. It could be like you mentioned the drugs. Maybe somebody wants to think of a different, like a monetary system, like some that doesn't, that's not like physical money. Maybe it's cost something else, and that's your inception, and you just run with that.
Yeah, I will say on those things, like, it's most helpful whenever it's like the amount of focus that is paid to those elements of world building is kind of equivalent to the import it has to the story. So like, I think of Stormlight Archives. I remember the first book focused so much on the monetary system. And I was like, I am so bored. I don't care what the difference in a brome and a chip is, Brandon Sanderson. Why are you telling me this? It's like, oh, it's super important to your magic system. That makes 100% sense. I forgive you for it. So like, there has to be this like give and take. Like, if you're telling me like you invented, new names for every single element on the periodic table, it better be important, or I'm gonna like check out really early on.
Yeah, I think that's a big thing too, is like to not overcomplicate it, right? Like, I absolutely say do all of that research, know every single bit of every part of your world in and out, but you don't have to tell everybody about it. You only need to tell them the things that are actually relevant, which I think for some people can be really tough. It's like, oh my gosh, I've spent so much time, like half my life, I feel like, is devoted to creating this world. I just want to tell you all about it. But at that point, that's when you need to have like a web page or a blog or something where you can just, put out little blurbs of things that are involved in the world that you don't necessarily have the time or the space to put into your novel.
Yeah, or just start putting footnotes everywhere. That's fine. Like, yeah. So actually, I have a book that I'm working on that's like half footnote, half actual one. But then, like, my first book, I created an entire conling for, and like, so I made up this entire language. Never used it in the book. All it's used for is like the little chapter headers, and it's like it says the name of the chapter, and then it's like also written in that language. So it just looks like a cool design. And if you don't know, you don't know. And it's like, cool, but I know. And it was very helpful for me to like help develop the culture and like this history. But yeah, like a lot of your world building that you do may never be seen, but like they can feel that it's a little bit deeper than what they see. And that's important.
And you can pull on it if you need it, right? So if you add this, even if your like well of knowledge is way more than what will ever show up in the book, if you know, like, even with characters, right? Like, if you know there's like a lineage of characters and what's in their genetic makeup, and you know that, and maybe in book one that never comes up because that's just a side character, but you know that they have the gene, right? So in book two, when that gene's unlocked by, I don't know, trauma, then you can use it. So like, you having that language might feel like, oh, it's just these little headers right now, but it might come up later that there's like a secret tunnel they have to unlock. I don't know, I'm making it up, but
it's actually an entire magic system. So so yeah, it does come up, but not until like book 3. So it's perfect. So
yeah.
I have, if I can toot my own horn, I have this great
toot away.
Yeah.
Please, Bob.
Boop, boop. This great review I have. It says, this book avoids the major pitfalls of world building by resisting the urge to bring everything to a screaming halt and explain things. Instead, it flows along merrily. And that made me so happy, because that wasn't necessarily an intention. I wasn't like, okay, I got to be careful with this. But I love how they do that, because like we're talking about, sometimes, I think our last episode, I brought up the point about Weathertop in Fellowship of the Ring, and how Tolkien didn't stop everything and like, here's 2 pages of what Weathertop is, the history is, and because we like the mystery, right? We kind of, there's something about whatever we're reading and a location or whatever, not necessarily what specific things like the drugs that Rain's talking about. Like there's that absolutely is part of the plot, the major portion of the plot, but there's some other things that we as readers can just kind of fill in the gaps or just have fun with that. Right, there should be something that we leave for them. I don't remember who I either I read it or heard it from somebody, but they were talking about let's not dumb down our readers and kind of explain everything to them. Let's just let them figure it out themselves, kind of thing. Yeah, so I think that's important.
Especially if it's not like a pivotal to the plot. Like, why are we bothering to stop for them? It's like, hey, here's the thing. I mentioned it. It may or may not come back later. And I'm just giving, this depth to the world that you can feel like, oh, there's a history deeper than everything I'm seeing right now. So I don't need, the lineage of every Slytherin back to Salazar Slytherin. Don't care. Not important. So it's, it's one of those things. If it's there, cool. But like, I mean, Tolkien, like, is this weird kind of in between of like, sometimes I'm like, you went way, way, way deep, but then it's like, wait, but like, if the evil guy can't create anything, he just twists things. Like, then is it true that dragons are just twisted eagles? Don't know. Really cool. But I wish you answered that question, Tolkien, instead of, creating like 3 whole languages. I just want that one answer.
All the songs.
Now the songs are fantastic.
Oh, okay.
So, and I do love the Silmarillion the most of all the books, which makes me a weird kind of a nerd, but that's
You're
me.
the weirdest.
It's true. I'm a contrarian.
I think it there's like such a fine balance, right, between describing enough in whatever part of the story that you're telling so that your reader can like be fully like immersed in the experience, but you also don't want to just like bomb them with everything, because 1, that's boring, and 2, you're taking away information that you could be scattering throughout your whole book, right? And you don't like, you can explain a setting in a way that isn't like an info dump. For example, if like the chapter that you guys read recently for me, I have a character who hasn't been back to this city in 10 years, and she comes back to the city, and I don't spend the first chapter describing every place in the city that she remembered seeing 10 years ago. Instead, I'm talking about, what the weather is like, because that is, playing a big impact. That's actually important to how the character is feeling. It reflects the way that she's feeling. It reflects what she's thinking. I describe some of the things in the tavern that she goes into, because that is letting the reader get immersed in the experience, and it's describing where she's at, but it's not like 10 pages of describing things that aren't important. So you just like finding that balance.
And I would say, like, if you're drafting or like you're working on a new project and your brain needs to dump that info, just do it. Like, get it out, move it over to a different document or highlight it or whatever, because getting that nuanced version takes a lot of time. And if you're drafting right now, your brain sometimes needs the like, here's the rundown of why things are the way they are, you get through it, you move on, you tell your story, and then you're like, cool, all that's gonna go. But this line right in the middle of these 2 pages of dumpster like garbage is really great, and now I can like lift it and place it where I need it. And so you get those nuanced pieces, but you do have to like, it is a funky balance, because there's this desire to not info dump right off the bat. But if you're drafting, I say, like, even if it's on the side, go for it, info dump, fill an entire like notebook with ideas, and then pick and choose, and you'll kind of like figure out what makes sense in your world. And those little nuanced things can show up as simply as in like the language you use around your characters too, right? Not just what they're saying, but like if we're in a future where, let's say, we've like degendered all terms, just by like omitting things like he manned the desk. No, nobody mans the desk anymore, right? And you're slowly taking out all these like little tiny things that people won't even notice until maybe you would slip up. Like that's like building the world, I feel like, by just like fine tuning it.
Wow, that's very subtle.
but
That works,
little things
yeah. That's
that
true.
if you go on for pages in your personal little notebook where you're like, oh yeah, all these terms have to come out, and the slang isn't appropriate anymore, right, or whatever, like that all has to come out. Then and you can like,
Yeah.
get that perfect version where they're not saying vibes anymore because
Yeah.
it's 2270 and we don't say vibes anymore. So
Yeah, that's smart. Yeah, because that is good, because in editing, I think we were just talking about that earlier before we started the show. And in editing, you take out a lot of stuff. So yeah, you want to just try to like plant as much as you can, and then when you're finished with the story, not just chapter one, when you're finished with the entire story, then you could go back in and start pulling out what maybe we can be considered weeds, or something like that. So that's neat.
I feel like when you're writing something too, like you're excited about it. So you're putting, like, you have some emotion behind it, right? So a lot of these scenes. And so a lot of the things that you're going to write might be a little bit more vivid in certain ways. And then when you go through and do a second draft, you might be more excited about other portions. So every single time you go through, if you are putting more on your page than is necessary, if you had tried to tone it down a little bit, you might have missed out on like a little bit of that emotion or things like that, right? So it's actually a really good point in that you can just kind of dump it all down and you can pick and choose what you want.
Yeah. And even as I'm drafting, I'll highlight chunks where I'm like, I got wordy. I'm aware that I got wordy. I'm leaving it here. Future Rain's problem. Like, but this one piece needs to be known at this point in time, right? We got to know that there's, like, I'm like working in the world that I'm playing with right now, but like, bum side effect, right? Or something like that. Like, needs to get dropped here. Now I give you the whole history of why there's a side effect, and we don't need all that right now. But I might need other chunks of that history at some point. So it can sit there in chapter 7, making it disgustingly long for now, and and then we'll come back to it later. So
Yeah, and something that's helpful with that, like that I've found, is like I can cut that out, put it in like a separate document, and then in the original, just make a little comment like, "Hey, like I need to insert this somewhere, like before this story, like or before this part of the story. Like the reader needs to know that this is something that happens, so that in the middle of the action, I'm not trying to explain it. So it could be an offhanded comment, whatever it is, but like somewhere before it needs to be addressed, so that it's not like interrupting the important moments."
Okay. Well, here's something we haven't covered yet: how to not overcomplicate your world, because that's easy to do. I feel like as far as world building, and I know certainly we'll probably have to do this with plotting your story, because I certainly am guilty of over plotting. But as far as world building, how do we not overcomplicate things?
anybody?
So I'll say on my end, I try to like think of what are the most important things about this world that are different than our world. And so like usually it's like 2 or 3 things. So like the one that I'm writing that's like the futuristic fantasy, it's like, okay, they accidentally destroyed their own planet because they didn't understand physics with how it related to their magic system. And then they've got a magic system. Those are like the 2 important things. So now they're on a spaceship traveling, destroying star systems because they're looking for a habitable planet. Easy setting, kind of, I guess that was a lot. But the nitty gritty is they destroyed their own planet because they don't understand physics, but they're also technologically advanced because of their magic. And so it's this weird nuance of like that. And so like that's enough of a world building. I don't have to go through and be like, oh, here's a monetary system. Here's this. Like it's just accepted. I've got one character throughout most of the book that's sitting on a starship for one day. And so like I've got so much in the background. I'm like, okay, I don't have to overcomplicate it with all these other political things or governments or all of that. It's like choosing the things that are most relevant and focusing on that, and just kind of, letting the rest either be background noise or backdrop or not even addressed at all. That's kind of how I handle it.
Yeah, kind of snowballing off that. I feel like, yeah, anything you can like put parameters on, right? Like if you create like a little barrier around your world, so maybe for the world you just described, like there's the spaceship, so that's like one setting. There's the dead world, so maybe that's a setting, if maybe, I don't know. And then like maybe they float around deep space. I don't know. So, you know, like you just shrunk your world down to something that you can manage. Even though you're in this, what sounds like a giant universe or multiverse, right? And so I think that too, like whether you block it off with land, right? So like I'm kind of working from like Texas to California. That's my shape. Now, my other story takes place across 2 worlds in different dimensions. There's actually 12 worlds, but we're really only focusing on 2. And even that like locks it down to like, I think people get in trouble a little bit when they go for like, let me build out the entire everything in every direction.
Okay.
And
So they go down every list you're talking about? Like, okay, what's the money like? What's the religion like?
Right.
What's the weather like?
I don't think it would hurt to have like a single sentence for some of those things. Right. So if you're like, I'm not really dealing with money, but it's a work trade system. Done.
Right.
Cool. Easy. You know, or like, I don't really want to deal with government. It's some sort of capitalistic something like we have, or you could like base it off of something that already exists in history that you can liken it to enough, then your reader can like plug themselves in. Unless you're going to go off on some like major government rewrite and you're going to come up with your own like hierarchy that people are really unfamiliar with, then I kind of agree, like you can kind of just skirt over that one, you know.
Yeah, I think so too. I think it's like, again, just not, you know, there's no point in mentioning things that aren't really necessary. Like for me, I have multiple gods in my multiverse or my universe that I'm working with, and I don't name every single one of them in the first book because one, like most of them aren't even relevant to this book whatsoever. Are they relevant to books in the future? Absolutely. Do I need to mention the fact that there's, you know, for example, 10 gods and goddesses between the whole universe? Absolutely, because that way in the 3rd book, if I mention a 5th one, people aren't like, what, how, where did this new god suddenly come from, right? So it's worth being like, hey, yeah, out of the 10 gods, these 3 are, you know, A, B, and C, you know, but you don't have to name all 10 of them. And you don't have to give the backstories for all 10 of them. Like, leave little things that are important so that you can use those later on, but you don't have to, you know, throw it all out there.
Yeah. Now, I will say that like part of this too is colored or should be colored by your main character as well. Like, you know, if you're playing like, or playing, I'm so used to D&D, if you're writing about a person who's like very scholarly, like they might get a little bit more in the weeds with those things because that's part of their characterization. Whereas like if you're, you know, my first book, the person who like grew up as a farmer, like he didn't know the things. Like they're going through a burial rite like in chapter 9 and he's like, wait, did I just like pray to my ancestors? Like, are our gods our ancestors? That's weird. And like so unaware of his own world that like it's, you know, that's just who he is. And so like it kind of explains away like why he doesn't know these things. And it's like, but then I have a book, one of the books I'm writing right now for November. It's like, well, they're at an academy for all of this magic stuff, so they should be a little bit more like down and like into the nitty gritty of like this is how this works. Like, yeah, there's 196 Fey Lords. Do I need to name all of them? No, but like they actually know a little bit more about what's going on, so they'll talk about it.
Yeah, I will say too, when it comes to naming, make sure that you Google every freaking name that you put in your novel. It's like in the beginning, it doesn't matter, but when you get to that, like one of your final drafts, I know you guys had caught this for me, and I had made this mistake when I was writing, working on my first novel, is because I had put this name for this god, which was Osiris, and I just thought it was really cool. And I found a name that was similar, and I kind of twisted the letters to make Osiris. And then as you guys were reading through it, you're all like, oh yeah, the Egyptian god. And I'm like, what? Like, you know, dead, yeah. Everyone's like, this is really weird. Why do you have an Egyptian god when everything else is like this? And I'm like, what are you talking about? You know, it's not Egyptian. Had I Googled it, you know, Osiris god, or even just the name probably.
Yeah, because that's the thing, is it may not be the same thing, but like I had one where I got almost all the way through like the 3rd draft of something, and I was like, okay, let me go double check all the names, and then one of them was a really bad word in another language, and I was like, I should probably change this.
How about you, Rain?
I just did that. I needed like a word for like plebs that wasn't plebs.
It was a little nicer.
And I was like, I can't. And like while I'm like if you guys ever do sprints, like you don't want to slow down for a word.
Mhm.
So I was just like, well, they're kind of simple. Simps. And my spouse is like, nope, not what you think it means. They're not just
That's perfect. That would have been
no.
brilliant. That would have been so funny. Like, wow. No, you're right though. That's exactly what we're talking about. Yeah.
It wasn't a terrible word, but it was not the right vibe.
It wasn't the right vibe we're looking for. Yeah. That's
Yeah.
fair.
So
So Google everything. Make sure.
Always
Double
Google.
check. Yeah. How about maps? How about map making? Anyone making any maps? What do you got, Rain?
I've made so I mean the story I'm currently working on, since it's future Earth, there's basically just like I have it that it's like it's future America, so it's like the blue walls and the red gooey center. And so like besides rearranging some state lines, I haven't had to like make a map. But for the one where I built like a world from scratch, I needed the map visually. That was really helpful. Like the town level, the region level, the territory, the world. So like I needed to have I think I'm a very visual person, as you can see by the storyboard.
Yeah,
like I need to see things and be able to like move things. So for me, drawing a map for those kind of projects is helpful. But
Now, just really basically, you said draw. So do you actually handwrite it, or do you use software to make a map? No.
no, I'm not very tech savvy.
Okay. I don't know.
If you go to my website, you can see that I'm not tech savvy. I do a lot by hand. Like, sorry, I'm adjusting my computer. I feel like I just think better pen to paper, and I don't know. And
More
they get
natural.
late after a while because you start like drawing on them, but
Mhm.
that's okay. They're
Okay. Okay, yeah. No, I just thought I'd ask because I know there is software out there, map making software that people are loving. But that's fair. Yeah, if you just whip out the sheets of paper and start sketching
Mhm.
around. How
That's
about
kind of what I do too. I like to keep it beside me, and as I'm writing, I will jot down, like if I come up with a new name for a city or I mention a new place, I like to just, not necessarily draw out the whole map, but I will write it down on the paper, kind of whereabouts it would be on a map, just so then I can kind of keep track of what's where, because you don't want to be talking about a place that's like surrounded by trees and everything, but then it turns out that you actually, had a place by the coast, or
Mhm.
like it's
Mhm.
important later on when you're talking about climates and when you start bringing in like plants and things like that.
Mhm.
I sometimes will pull plants and stuff like that from like the world that we live in, and I don't want to take a plant and put it in a completely different climate if it's the same plant, because that just doesn't make sense. So I like to keep track that way of like what cities they are, where they're supposed to be, and then kind of like what climate they're in. And I like to see it. Otherwise, I'm like, oh, I think I said it was north, but maybe I said it was south. I'm not really sure.
Yeah, that's the other big thing. Like that gets into like consistency. Like you can make up whatever you want, but it has to be consistent. And so like I'm really bad about that. Like if I don't write down like a little cheat sheet for me, like so my Kindle Vella that I have right now is about like superheroes and supervillains, and so they all have alter egos. And I thought I hadn't given one his like actual name yet. And then I had somebody like reach out to me and they're like, "Hey, I just wanted to mention it, but like you gave multiple different names for this person." It's like, oh no,
Ooh.
because it gets published every week. And so it's like, I don't have it all written. And I was like, man, I could have sworn I hadn't, but I guess I did. So I'm like, you're going to have to go and like retcon that real quick and fix it. And so that was rough. So consistency is key. And, having like a story Bible or whatever, however it works for you, like, I'm trying to make my own little like encyclopedia and glossary and stuff now, because I'm like, I'm so bad at all of that.
We're here to learn. We're here to learn.
Mhm.
I mean, I've seen your glossary though, and I think they're amazing. Like you do such a good job with your glossaries, and they help. Like they're fantastic. They really
Well, yeah,
are.
and that for that book in particular, like the glossary is part of the book, which is a
Yeah.
new thing for me. So yeah, Rand, the one I'm sharing with them is our writers group. like literally is like footnotes everywhere and like a glossary and then working on an index and appendices. It's a weird textbook kind of a thing. So it's been
Awesome.
fun.
Cool. Yeah, I just keep track as I go. Every new term, every new everything. I try really hard, and then I'll even highlight them in turquoise because whatever. Just so I can see them, like this isn't a comment, this isn't like this is a new term. So all the terms are always turquoise at the end of the first draft. Terms and places and names. Any new word.
I have to. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, sorry.
I have to ask. So turquoise, and like I said, for our listeners, there's a board behind her with all different colors. So blue was for. Oh no, I got it wrong. What I thought blue was for something. What are your colors and what are they for?
The
Those are
colors on the
POVs.
board correlate with a character. So some sort of scene that's like specific to that character. So like blue, it starts over here. Like blue is my main character. Green is kind of a secondary character. And they kind of take over. Like whoever's in charge of that scene gets the note card.
How fun. This
Yeah.
is so neat.
I am
And
blown
turquoise
away
is
by
just
how
'cause I like
organized you are.
turquoise. Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've got like a stack of those in the room back there. They just like they're lined up against the wall, because I'll like rotate which project I'm working on, and it's just like, whoop,
Wow.
I grab the next one.
Hey, Cake, how about this is so, and we will warn our listeners and our guests, like we'll go off on tangents. Now I feel like where did you learn all of this? Like putting all this stuff up on the board and colors and.
I don't know. I'm like, I think I'm just kind of, like I said, a visual learner. So for me, being able to like, and I'm a floor gremlin. Like I do most of my writing, like laying on my stomach or bent like a pretzel. And so for me, like being able to kneel over the board and like move pieces around is really nice. And I also, because I do a lot of like Excel spreadsheets too, right? When I'm editing, I'm very systematic about things. But something about being able to see it all at once, which I get limited on my screen, right? Like I can't see all of everything at once. Even though our eyes don't work that way for some reason, being able to just like play with the puzzle all at once is really nice.
I like that.
So
That makes
I
sense.
found, so it's like a chalkboard that I just like taped them to. And I found it against a building and I took it.
This is mine.
Being like thrown away. It was like by the dumpsters. And
This
I was
is
like,
mine.
I'm gonna
That's the
use
best.
this.
That is awesome. Free is the best.
Yeah.
Yeah, right on. Wow. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's so cool how systematic that is. I feel like there's been so many times where I'm like scrolling through like my Google Doc and I'm just, or I don't even use Google, I use Word. So I'm scrolling through my Word doc and I'm like, oh my gosh, like where is that scene? And like thinking that I said something, but then I didn't. And then I'm like trying to scroll through to find it. And it's just like a nightmare. And I'm like, I really need a little bit more. This time I did better. I actually just did like my main points instead of like whole descriptions and stuff. So it was easier to find things, but that is just like the most amazing organizational system I've ever seen.
Yeah.
Well, and then
Yeah,
you can
especially
like,
how many POV characters do you have? Like,
okay, so for my first book, 4, but it was 6. And then I drafted the sequel, which is what's up behind me, which I've been playing with again because the first book I'm about to like send back into the query trenches for a bit, starting in the beginning of the new year. And because it was 6 POVs and then 5 and then now 4, like I've been really trying to just make it as clean and crisp as can be. I'm like, oh crap, the second one is like is just gonna be, I feel like the draft that's sitting on my computer is just for fun. I'm just gonna take it out and like shred it up.
Oh, no.
Pull out the cute bits and yeah. So I've been playing with this project in the background because I want to like reconfigure who do I really need to keep, and I think I'm gonna bring it to 5.
Hmm.
So speaking of that, I have to ask now, do you print out like your whole manuscript ever and go through it like a physical copy of it? Or do you, when you're at that point of editing, do you go through and just do it all on your computer?
I usually do it all on my computer. I did it once where I printed it out and I absolutely hate it. So I know you're not supposed to like do all the grammar stuff as you go, but it like really irked me that I couldn't just like tweak things
Right.
along the way. So I have not done that since. I've always just done it on the computer.
That's awesome. I know it always looks so cool when you see people with like their big manuscripts and they're out there with their red pen. And I'm like, I don't know if that would really work for me. I have an editing problem, so it probably would be good for me to do it that way, but
yeah, if I really want to read it, and so I think the beauty of like printing it out is that you can't go make all those little tiny changes, right? Like you're in theory supposed to be looking at like maybe overall plot or character arc, or like you're looking for something, right? Like even just, is it all coming together? But if you're like, it sounds like we are like us, then you can't not go like to town with your red pen.
right.
So one thing I've done is just put it on my Kindle, like a PDF on my Kindle, because I'm not about to leave comments with my Kindle, the touch screen. Absolutely not. Like I have it, but it does allow you to just like read like a reader, which is nice. So
That's a really great idea. I like that a lot.
Yeah, something I found that like helped me also like midway to just like kind of plow through it, because like I'm dyslexic, so like trying to read through, and like I'm familiar with my own work, so I'm like my brain starts like trying to fill in these weird things. So I honestly do a lot of like text to speech whenever I'm trying to do those bigger plot things. And it just helps because I'll just put it at like 150% speed or whatever too, and just like, oh, what is going on here? And just like those are the moments where I'm like, okay, like I need to go and like I'll get out the highlighter and look, this is a section that needs to be completely reworked because it sounded super weird coming out of this person's like mouth. So
I'm dyslexic too, and the text to speech, it's the best. It like
that and audiobooks are just a blessing. It's
a dream. Yeah.
Well, now comes a part of our show where we talk about what not to do. So how about what not to do with world building?
Ooh.
And we'll, do you have anything, Austin? Because I sure
Oh no,
don't.
I was just saying oof, as in I haven't thought about this. We do it every week, and then
Yeah, we
I
do it every
never
week.
think about it ahead of time.
What not to do with world building?
I'm gonna go first, so
Go
that
for it. Go
thanks
for
a
it.
bit.
Wow.
Could get out of the way.
Bold.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you for that.
This is like so cheesy, but don't let it keep you from writing, because you can like plan and plan and plan and plan, and then you get to chapter whatever and you realized you didn't have something worked out and you need to go back to the drawing board a little bit. Cool, go back to the drawing board a little bit, add it where you're at, and you will get to revisit those early chapters, I promise you, during edits. So like build as you go, and don't be afraid that you don't have it all perfectly planned, or if you have to change things, like it's okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna jump off that, and I will say I have a 3-year-old at home, and my 3-year-old can ask why all day long. You answer, and then it's a why to that, and it's a why to that, and like just layers and layers and layers and layers deep. Your reader is not a 3-year-old. They are not going to keep asking why this is like, they want the story. They don't need a complete exposition of everything and then an explanation of that and an explanation of that. Like they want the action and they want it to move and they want to feel immersed in the world, and reading an encyclopedia, as much as I love writing them, is not what they're there for. And so, yeah, just don't get bogged down in thinking that the reader needs to know everything. They are there for the story. So don't forget, like in that same vein, like don't forget what a reader is there to read. So don't write more than needs to be written, honestly. So you can cut things out and just don't be afraid to have this other document. You throw things in for yourself, but the reader doesn't need to be bogged down with that. So don't bog down your readers, I guess, is my don't this week.
All right. I'll go next. I'll say don't, yeah, kind of the same, similar. Sorry. I'll just say ditto. No. Don't overshadow your characters with your world. Readers fall in love with your characters, not the world.
Mm.
I'm thinking of their movies, but Blade Runner, visually stunning. I absolutely love the world, but I'm not there for the world. I'm there for the characters. I want to know what they're thinking. I want to know what they're experiencing. I want to know what lies they believe. I want to see them win, right? I want to see
I
your
will say
characters
that's
win.
one of my
Austin, you
favorite
already
thing
had
is
your
what.
chance.
No,
I'm
but I'm
talking
just
now.
saying that's my favorite thing about character building is what lie does this person believe?
Oh, we got to do
That's just
character
like
building next.
such a
Anyway,
good thing and close to my heart. I love that.
yeah. So don't
I love
overshadow your
uninformed
characters.
people in books.
I think mine has to be, don't allow your character's dialogue to explain your world building if they should already know it. And so this, for me, what I mean by this is, like, if you have two characters who are talking about something, it's totally fine to use your dialogue for world building and to explain an area or explain something if one of the characters genuinely does not understand, like if they're not from this area or they don't know, or they're a different religion, or if they're a different species, like that is totally fine. In that case, that works. But if both of your characters have grown up in a town together and they've grown up going, being involved in like the same religion and praying to the same gods and things like that, you cannot have dialogue where one character is explaining it to another character because they already know it.
Right.
Mm.
And I've read so many
good.
books like this, and it just like, it drives me crazy because I'm like, what? Like, what do you mean you don't
not
already know this? Like, this is
Yeah.
crazy.
Oh, you know this thing that we do at the same time every single day. Let's go do it.
Yeah, like it's just so unnatural. It just makes the conversations feel really stiff and awkward. So don't do that.
Yeah, it's probably a lazy writing way of just kind of introducing the world without, thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's that thing where it's like you're told not to like just do a like info dump, and you're like, oh, I'll have my characters talk about it, and so it's like just 1% better than that, but it's like it's the exact same thing. You just put quotes around it.
It's on par with like waking up and looking in the mirror and describing themselves, right? That's where that's at. So, all right.
Hey, but
Yeah.
we've all done it.
I mean, I think
Thinking through the history, that kills me.
I think that there's ways that you could work around it too. Like, for example, like you could have, if you're talking about the gods, like you could have one character say, do you think it's possible that instead of them, having come from the sky, they were actually, born beneath the earth, or like, like a question like that, because then you're explaining where they came from, but in a way that it's like a comparison, or, like, I'm sure there's ways you can work it in, but it's a very fine line.
Yeah.
Oh man,
there's probably
actually,
better ways to do it.
That's 100% fair too, and I feel like I just copied Rain, so I am gonna say, like, y'all both reminded me. I've got too many things to say apparently, but like, don't make everybody experts on everything in your world. Like, it kills me, y'all. Like, nobody knows. I don't know the entire history of the town I'm living in, and I've grown up around here the whole time. Like, I'm certainly not gonna know the ins and outs of like every geopolitical thing that's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So like my farmer shouldn't either. And so it's okay. So,
Right.
and having disagreements, don't make everybody agree on everything. If you've got a religion, it should have people that argue about, what does this mean? Because, unless the God is there telling them, this is what I mean, even then they're probably disagreeing. Like, but what did he really mean? So.
All right. Rain, any closing thoughts on world building?
I don't know. Do it, have fun.
Do it, have fun. That's perfect.
Perfect.
Yeah. Have fun. Yeah. Please remember to have fun. I have a no, never mind. I won't mention it. It's a Funko. It's Pee Wee Herman. He's holding a sign that says "fun." That's a secret word of the day. But I keep it next to my writing keyboard because we need to have fun. So, all right. Good words. All right. So, and once again, Rain, how do we find you?
I'm on Instagram at @_as_Rain_Sullivan. Gosh, I hate saying that. And RainSullivanWrites.com.
Okay. And for the YouTubers, we will have these links down the bottom. All right, and that's it. Don't forget to write and describe to our to our channels at the links below, or everyone, all of our social media. Please go follow all of us all at the same time and call all your friends about it. or via your favorite podcast service so you don't miss any of the Writer's Realm content. We always love to hear from our listeners. So if you have a question or topic you want us to dive into, get in touch. Rain, we had a great time with you. I would love to have you on again to talk about anything, because you were a blast. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, thank
you
you
for
guys
being
so
with
much for
us.
having me.
Yeah,
This is
thank
a
you
lot of
so much
fun.
for the great ideas.
Yes.
Yes, I love talking writing. So like,
Right on.
whatever you guys want to talk about.
We'll call you. We'll
Sounds
call you
good.
on next week. Yeah, you'll be our regular, guest. Here she is again. No, I'm just playing.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah,
It's been great.
it's great having you. Okay, well, until next time, everyone. Talk to you later. Bye.
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 Bye.